to tell you a story about how tough it is actually to build a home. And as he says, I came from South Africa, and I've been lucky enough to be, or my family has been very, very closely associated with the freedom struggle. Okay? And through that association, I've met many wonderful people. And one of them was the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I've been able to interact with him a lot. And I remember one day I was having a conversation and asked him, "Sir, how tough was it to rebuild a nation?" So he tells me, he says, "Shyamal, there's only one way to tell you this, and I'm going to tell you a story." He says, when Mandela came out of prison, okay, he made me the chairperson of what was called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Okay. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a legal body that was formed, right, to pardon whites for the atrocities that they committed during the apartheid. Which means that a white person could come up, right, say whatever they wanted to, that they did during the apartheid, and they'd be pardoned. So this ran for 3.5 years, and he says I was the chairperson and I had 2 white judges besides me. Okay. And he said one day I was sitting in my court, which started at 10 and ended at 6 every single day. And he says there was a man sitting at the back who must have been about 85 years old. And he sat there the entire day, he never moved. Every now and then he put his hand in his face in his hand. And he looked and he never said a word. Even at lunch he didn't go out. And he says at 5:45, 15 minutes before we ended, he ambled forward with his walking stick. And he said he'd like to say something. So Mr. Tutu said, "Do you want to come back tomorrow?" He says, "No, I don't know if I'll be here, but can I just speak now?" So he says, "Fine." So the man said, "I was a police commissioner or a police constable in an area called Cato Ridge. And I had a home that was 5 kilometers away from my police station. And every day I used to drive on the exact same road to go to mine. And 1/2 kilometer from my police station, there was a tiny house, okay, in a small piece of land, beautiful house. And he says, I kept on thinking to myself, if that was my home, at lunchtime I could go home and eat something and relax and go back to the office. Now in South Africa in those days, okay, if you were a security officer or a police officer, someone of government, you could walk into a piece of land and declare that white-only land anytime. And the only regulation that you had to give them was give that person about 2 hours to take whatever positions they wanted to and leave. So I walked into this house, he says, and there was a black man there who was, mid-50s, 60s. And I told him this is white-only land, and he was heartbroken. So he asked, very politely, "Can I please have my 2 hours?" So the constable said, "Fine, I'll give it to you." And he drove off in his own car to the police station. He says, as I was going, I think I even forgot that I'd went there, and I sat down in my police station, and I worked. And in the afternoon at 4 o'clock, as I was leaving, I remembered what I'd done. So I drove my car back to that place. And he says, as I was going, I knocked on the door. There was no answer. So I thought the person was hiding, and decided to walk around the back of the house. So he says, as I was walking around the back, the police constable says, is that as I take the edge, I see this man hanging from the only tree in the back. Hanging. And he says, I've been living with this for the last 60 years of my life. I haven't spent 1 minute in that house. And he says, I go back. And you want to know how hard it is? He says, I've had to listen to this for 3.5 years. Listen to these atrocities that were done to my brothers and my sisters, and tell them it's okay. So when I go to Mr. Mandela, who's my very dear friend, and I asked him, I said, is this a blessing or a curse that you're giving to me? And his words were, he says, only a man who is so close to God will realize that to build a home, you need to forgive. Because without forgiveness, we have no future. Okay, that's my story.